Bakugo will be changed forever after this. Whether physically or emotionally, we know the events of the last few chapters of My Hero Academia are gonna have a long-lasting effect on the character of Katsuki Bakugo, also known as the Hero Dynamite. After suffering through what he suffered at the hands of Shigaraki, nobody, including myself, expected him to be coming back into the picture. But now that we know that Bakugo likely is going to be revived, what do the events of the recent chapters say about how he's going to be when he gets back up? What is Bakugo going to be capable of once he stands back up after being revived by Edgeshot? This question has multiple meanings because physically, Bakugo will never be the same due to the fact that despite any healing that Edgeshot or Best Jeanist are able to give him, there are likely still going to be injuries present at the end of the battle. They can only do so much likely to save Bakugo, mostly by getting him back on his feet. However, after all this is said and done, Bakugo likely is going to need some sort of stay in the hospital because Horikoshi has been very consistent throughout the series in letting there be consequences for injuries that continue on and persist further on in a person's life. And it's also very easy to say that Bakugo's quirk will forever be changed because of this new awakening of being able to use explosions all over his body, which is different than the way that he's been using his quirk up until this point. However, could this change in Bakugo go even further? Various Twitter users and members in the community all seem to think so. There's thoughts that Bakugo might come out of this quirk surgery a changed man. And that's due to the idea that sometimes when people get transplants, it's not completely unlikely for them to take on some personality characteristics from the person who donated the organ to them. Now that's sort of in the realm of pseudoscience, but in My Hero Academia, which is a completely fictional world, things like that are much more likely to be true, especially when they're given to us in the narrative by character dialogue. When it's told to us in My Hero Academia previously in the story that that happens when someone gets a transplant, they could take on personality traits, and then now we see an actual transplant happening between two characters, I wouldn't necessarily be all that surprised, like a lot of the fandom, if Bakugo starts taking on personality traits from Edgeshot. Now, we don't know a lot about Edgeshot because throughout the series, he's only appeared 22 or so times out of the 364 chapters of My Hero Academia, or I suppose 365 now. But we know that at the very least, he has a very stoic sort of ninja personality, which very much so differs from the personality that Bakugo has had for most of the series. I mean, in moments we see that Bakugo can be the quietest person in the room, and he might not say anything and has a very serious attitude, but usually, and especially in battle, he finds himself being very loud, being very overconfident, and those aren't necessarily horrible traits for a hero to have. We see Mirko having amazing success in her career, becoming one of the top 10 heroes even. However, Mirko's also in a very similar situation to Bakugo at the moment, where Mirko was, I don't want to say overconfident, but too willing to sacrifice herself. It's very similar to Bakugo and Deku in many ways. It's sort of like a combination of the two, if you ask me. But regardless, I feel like the lesson that Horikoshi is trying to teach us is that, yes, characters like Bakugo and characters like Mirko, who are very destructive and are willing to put their lives on the line, those are very, very special characters, and we should applaud that effort. But also, a change in mentality might be better moving forward, and there might be a better way to do things than throwing your life away. So if Bakugo does adapt parts of Edgeshot's personality, I do think that Bakugo is going to be a lot less likely to just dive in and rush in as quick as possible against an opponent, and he's going to do some of the stuff that we saw him doing right before he was taken out by Shigaraki, right? He's going to be a lot more calculating, I think, a lot more planning. He's going to look for opponents' weaknesses specifically and how he could get around them and dodge them in a much, much more tactical and slow way, almost like an assassin looking for the perfect time to strike, instead of just constantly trying to overwhelm his opponents with all the amazing things he can do. Bakugo has amazing skills and an amazing quirk and amazing power, but what he needs from Edgeshot is Edgeshot's accuracy, precision, and his skill of execution. And that's not just execution of taking people out, it's also the execution of being able to do something, right? Being able to execute when the time comes and being able to dictate and know when that time is. So I, like many others, believe that this quirk surgery on Bakugo will have some effect on Bakugo's personality, but there are others that take it a little further. There are some people that believe that due to the fact that Edgeshot is using his entire body to go into Bakugo and heal him, that Bakugo might somehow gain access to Edgeshot's quirk. Because Edgeshot is going inside of Bakugo and pretty much fusing with his body, but where does his quirk factor go? I mean, that energy can't just be destroyed necessarily. Maybe Bakugo will start seeing Edgeshot in his dreams and seeing his vestige or something like that. It's a very, very strange circumstance, I'll say. Because, sure, Edgeshot's quirk obviously isn't to give his quirk to somebody, but in this instance where he's literally fusing more or less with Bakugo, you would think, much like how Overhaul used his quirk to fuse with others in the Overhaul arc and had access to their quirks, that same situation might occur here with Bakugo, especially considering that Bakugo was a previous user of One For All, and that in and of itself might just be enough to kind of change things a bit, or at least give us enough reasonable doubt to assume that that would have an effect on the merging between Explosion and Edgeshot's quirk. And at that point, could you imagine, could you imagine someone who can fold themselves and blow you up? They can go inside your organs and pierce inside you and then just blow you up from all over the inside and just be completely unstoppable speed-wise, because Edgeshot was extremely fast and we know that Bakugo is extremely fast. So could you imagine some sort of fusion or merge of the two's abilities and quirks? It would be very interesting to see, I think, and I think the fandom is definitely spot on with this one, that is definitely the most likely route, and I don't think Bakugo is just going to wake up and feel sad about all the heroes who are more or less sacrificing themselves for him and then be only changed in that way. I suppose it would be more interesting for Bakugo's personality to be affected by Edgeshot's sacrifice, not just because it happened, but also because of metaphysical things going on with the world of quirks, and also for Bakugo's quirk specifically to be affected by the transplant, or I suppose fusion, with Edgeshot. And of course, this all fits in line with Endeavor's vision of the future, which a lot of people took to be actual visions of what the characters would look like, right, when they're a little older. We saw Shoto with his hair shorter, we saw Deku with a longer cape, and the biggest change that I suppose that we could notice besides his gauntlet was that Bakugo had long kind of tassels behind his head that connected to tiny little explosion marks. Instead of the big ones that he always has connected to his mask, it kind of looked like his face mask was now tied on in the back, and there were threads that stuck out and had little explosions on them, kind of like little fuses. And now with the benefit of hindsight, it seems like that would be some sort of homage to Edgeshot, right? And it could go even further than that, right? Bakugo could just include things like that in his hero outfit because he's a little more predisposed to liking thread and things like that because of a personality change due to Edgeshot fusing and or transferring himself into Bakugo. So I definitely think some very interesting developments could come of this. Again, I think Twitter is spot on with this one. Sorry that I can't credit a specific person because I have seen it in like 20 different tweets, 20 different threads. It's kind of all pieced together, but I'm definitely not taking credit for it. I'm just sharing it with you guys. So what do you think? Will Bakugo be changed forever after this next chapter of My Hero Academia thanks to the events that have gone on so far? Or do you think he's just going to wake up and continue on as he was? Please subscribe if you're new to the channel and you want to see more content. My Hero Academia Season 6 is on its way, and I'm going to go pretty crazy on that and Chainsaw Man and a few other things. And if you're not new here, but you're not subscribed or you're thinking about it, I mean, what are you waiting for? Let's just join the party and let's get it started. So I love you guys. It's Pineapple. I'll see you later.